I'm sorry to be keeping you through your break, but this is a very big topic, so I will try and include most of what I had thought about talking about. My name is Tish Shute. I'm Director of AR/VR from Futurewei Technologies. I'm also co-founder of Augmented World Expo, an augmented reality event with Edinburgh. And my clicker isn't working. New slides. Thank you. Back. Spatial Computing in the Age of Light, a big title and a big vision. Just to begin this with a few highlights of my career that have informed my thinking on this topic. I'm actually one of the few people who've been in augmented reality my whole career. My first startup was a 6 degree of freedom motion control robot for doing visual effects for film and television. That's when you layer the effects on top of film. So it's the same as augmented reality in the real world, but you're layering the visual effects on top of film with repeat pass photography in this robot that you see on the top left. And then obviously being part of this great experience of Augmented World Expo is a huge highlight. It's a 10-year experience and amazing. And then also, I spent 4 years working with Will Wright, both in Stupid Fun Club and Entertainment. And Will Wright is really the greatest simulation designer on the planet. And also one of the geniuses of AI, and particularly he was doing AI long before we had these commodified tools. So I learned a lot there, and it's become actually really very important, I think, for the unfolding of spatial computing. So it's the 10th anniversary, as you know, and I think that's an opportunity to look back and look forward at the same time. I was looking back at some of my notes from ARE, that was when it was Augmented Reality event in 2010. And that was a very vibrant meeting. It might have been only 400 people, but the caliber of that meeting was amazing. We were already thinking about spatial computing. That's Patrick O'Shaughnessy, Will Wright, Sophia Parafina in the top right, unpacking the Parrot drone and modifying it. And you know, look at all the audience there. They were in the art exhibition, which was a huge part of the early thinking. And Helen Papagiannis's Wonder Turner. It was a very special time, and I think it was because we were free then actually to write letters to the future, and not just from the perspective of a business model. And this was one of the conversations from actually that was next year, 2011, Augmented Reality event 2011. And Bruce Sterling and Vernor Vinge talked about what science fiction brings to the picture. And Bruce summed one aspect of it up very well, this aspect of amplification, and he said, H.G. Wells says you should only go 3 times and not 4 times, or no one will believe you, and 2 times people think you're exaggerating. Very interesting, and we really thought through these sort of 100-year, 50-year scenarios, and I think that's something we need to continue to do. Jaron Lanier on the right, I forgot to put the title of his talk there, but you can find his talk from his keynote from 2011. Absolutely you need to listen to this. This is still very relevant. And one of the things he mentioned in that talk was this book, The Machine Stops, science fiction, written by Ian Forster in 1909. And this has become, other people have been thinking about this book recently, and particularly this quote from Michael Hiltzik: "We are fooled by the illusion that technology is bringing us together when actually it is the means of driving us apart." And in this book, The Machine Stops, it's really, we have come to a point in the world where everything is a second-hand experience through the machine. And this is quite a dystopic vision. So enough of Black Mirror, but I bring that up at the beginning because I think that's one of the differences over the last 10 years, is that we actually have narrowed our vision, and we should not. We need to keep our vision big. So what are the trends that are really important since ARE Augmented Reality event 2010? Obviously, this is a big one. I mentioned this in my talk here 2 years ago. We've gone from mobile first to AI first. And this was something Satya Nadella said in June 16, and Bruce at ARE 2010 also talked very eloquently about the relationship to AR and VR and the mobile revolution. And one of the other speakers, I mean, I think this is to sort of give credit to these early years, that we had these foundational people give us a vision for the future. I'm calling them letters to the future. And a speaker at ARE 2010 and 2011, Blaise, Agüera, Arcas, is really probably one of the most important people in AI right now. And why is he so important? It's because he is writing us letters to the future on AI, trust, privacy, art, and federated learning. And this talk you can find online, From Media to Meaning. He opens it saying, the reason we work on the intersection of devices and neural nets is because we feel like a lot of important privacy and ethics issues in AI actually depend on these technologies being an extension of the human as opposed to being just parts of a service. And this is a very important guiding thought. I'm not going to talk about AI in this talk too much, but I just wanted to note this because we began that conversation in 2010 and 2011 here. So what's the other big trend? You've obviously noticed it because we've been talking about it all the time here, spatial computing. But I want to be a little rigorous about this because I think in our community of AR, VR, we've been very focused on something that I think Magic Leap has called it personal spatial computing. But there's a bigger trend than that, and we cannot in the AR, VR community separate ourselves off from this trend of self-driving cars, of Internet of Things. And this article by Vijay Sundaram of Google Brain is really one of the most excellent definitions of what we mean by spatial computing, this emerging definition, where machines are no longer attached to us, not like the glasses, instead occupy space around us physically or virtually and can be used by many people at the same time, multiplayer mode. And AR, VR and this sort of wider definition of spatial computing do come out of these same technological advances. They have lots in common: center on natural interaction, text, voice, gesture, a new context for computing, wrists, eyes, and ears. But we cannot limit ourselves to this vision of the personal spatial computer. And this Magic Leap's done a wonderful article on this. But this is, the device right on the head. You can see no one else is there, this very solitary view of the world. And this is something that is emerging now very, very clearly. And it is a break from something. We've been in an era of personal computing for a very long time. And perhaps, so the trend of spatial computing, but it also highlights another trend within personal spatial computing. And that is this intersection of biometrics, and I would like to say really hyper-personal spatial computing. And I have to say, there's a wonderful article that Avi Bar-Zeev published yesterday. The eyes are the prize. And he is one of also the early sort of thought leaders and very much part of Augmented World Expo's evolution. And he has really done a wonderful article here on looking at, what is the sort of the dark side, but what is the positive side also of this trend of hyper-personal spatial computing. And it's big, and I think that's really going to begin to define what eyewear is about. So please read the article. But again, I'm not going to talk about personal hyperspatial computing today. I want to go back to this sort of foundational definition that Vernor Vinge gave us in 2011. Augmented reality's importance to humanity is in its role as a portal to the power of ubicomp and human cooperation. And power of ubicomp, I think you can say power of spatial computing. And back to Vijay's article, because this definition is really excellent. My only quibble with it, these are the experiential principles of spatial computing: embodiment, intelligence, proactivity, ambience, social awareness. My only thing I want to add to this, and I will talk about it and why, is this idea of emergence. If reality is going to be the platform, we can't be riding a roller coaster passively. We have to be driving a car, all of us. So let's talk about first Vijay's wonderful, these wonderful sort of principles for spatial computing. Embodiment, machines take virtual agents or physical things, forms that manifest as their own entities alongside people. For example, a personal drone that can see and hear you. Intelligence, machines see, hear, sense, read, learn, decide, speak, gesture, move, etc. So, the example here I've put up is the self-driving cab that you hail at a busy intersection and takes you to work and actually interacts you and helps you get your day set up on the way there. And proactivity, machines have presence and smarts to initiate interactions with people and to interject in people-to-people interactions rather than waiting or requiring explicit human operation. And a couple of examples here, and you can't underestimate the importance of the car for augmented reality and for spatial computing. Remember, the mobile phone started in the car, many good reasons for that. Power, unlimited. And these are the other example I have, the car is also a wonderful place, particularly when it's self-driving, full of screens. So, the car can help people interact with their environment and all kinds of things. And this fourth thing, ambience, and this is a very important part of spatial computing. We're moving from screens to scenes. So it's not just the smart home, it's your home becomes a health hub. What does that mean? What is the ambience of that? And then, the one sort of part of this definition, emergence, which wasn't included in that wonderful article, I would like to talk about now, because working with Wrobel for 4 years was really a privilege. And up to now, I haven't really been able to share that because that was a job. And Will has most wonderfully done a masterclass. It's called The Fundamentals of Games Design. It's available for all of you, and I really advise you, after, when you have time, take this course, because remember, master simulation designer. But what did Will do most brilliantly that no one else had done? He gave the player a toy, and the players turned it into a game. And you can see that I think our task is to give people tools, and then people can turn them into something that they can use to build their environments and their world in the way they would like. So a player-centered experience is at the heart of Will's designing. And again, more like driving a car where the player has choices than riding a roller coaster. So when I began working with Will, the first book he advised me to, recommended I read, which I had skimmed years ago but hadn't studied, was a pattern language. And was a very important tool that Will used in his design process, particularly for the Sim City. And actually, why is pattern language so important? It's because this has become a tool that everyday people can use to take control of their environments. It also happens to be hugely influential on object-oriented programming, and now on many, many other fields. So thank you, Will, for introducing me to pattern language. And it's not just the pattern language of cities and systems. People have pattern languages. And there's a wonderful book by Michael Lewis, who wrote Moneyball, about this work by Tversky and Kahneman, which really found pattern language, but how, while people do behave very irrationally and can do some quite strange things, some of these things can actually be anticipated. So what is at the heart of designing for emergent behavior? I mean, this is an example Will gives in his masterclass of how he designed SimAnt, because there was this wonderful work by E.O. Wilson that really deconstructed the intelligence of ants. And it is system, if you want to design for emergent behavior, it's system thinking. It's how, and it's also the interaction of different systems. And I think this is critical now. I mean, this is the premise of spatial computing, is that reality is the next platform for computing. And in 1992, David Gelernter wrote a very, it's one of the seminal books on this idea of reality being the next platform for computing, called Mirror Worlds. And he wrote, Software today offers assistance to the specialist in everybody, not to the citizen. The citizen, the mere citizen, deals with the increasingly perilous complexity of government, business, transportation, school, university, and legal systems unaided. That's what mirror worlds were about to David Gelernter. And I do think, you know, for Ori and I think it's always been about advancing humanity. And you could say the moonshot by 2020 is maybe pretty outrageous, but actually if you look at it depends how you define augmented reality. It's not quite as much as a moonshot as you might think. But this, I think, why I want to talk about this is, it's all right to say advance humanity, but we need to understand what's that about. What does that mean? And again, to go back to 2011, when we had these wonderful, Ori used to call them the prophets of AR. And Vernor Vinge said this very telling remark. Software patents, some styles of cloud computing are blunting the ability of average people to innovate. And another simple way of saying that is the supercomputer in our pocket. Ooh, my phone is not in my pocket. The supercomputer in your pocket, your phone, has become primarily a device for consumption. That is a tragedy, actually, if we want to advance humanity. So, and I mean, just an example of this, digital twins is a trend in 2019. But, I mean, if you compare Gelernter's vision for mirror worlds to sort of the way I think we think about digital twins, this is not going to advance humanity if we have this. I mean, the last part, Kevin Kelly has a wonderful article on Wired about digital twins and mirror worlds. But whoever dominates this grand third platform will become among the wealthiest and most powerful people and companies in history. I mean, is that the kind of letter to the future we want to write? So I think that's, again, why I'm looking back to ARE 2010 and 2011 to think about this vision of advancing humanity. And what was I doing at ARE 2010? I was presenting something called AR Wave. And that was because I'd met this wonderful young, Bertine and Thomas, two amazing game designers from the Netherlands. And Thomas Wrobel, who sadly passed in 2017, I mean, was absolutely extraordinary person. I mean, don't like to use the word genius unadvisedly, but very special. And a genius, let's say it. But what were we doing? He and I, we had bonded over this idea that if you remember back then, 2010, Google Wave had been released. And most people remember that crazy real-time UI. But behind it was an open source federated server where you could actually conceive of a platform for AR where everyone would have access and could communicate with each other and work with aggregated and shared data, just like you do in email. Doesn't matter if you're on Outlook or Gmail, you can share. So that was us beginning to poke at this dream about what is an open platform for AR. And of course, if reality is the platform, it has to be an open platform. Reality doesn't belong to anyone. But this mission of expanding the nature of communications and collaboration long precedes AR, VR, and anything we talked about at Augmented Reality event. And here, the work of Alan Kay it's every one of us in this room, almost everything we do in computing, from our user interfaces to our iPads to object-oriented programming. We owe a lot of our contemporary computing to Alan Kay. But this is a drawing Alan made in 1972 of two kids interacting. And the key point in this drawing is they're interacting in real time, and they are seeing the same thing on their screen. That has still not happened. And the mission that Alan described and has always described and continues to lead on is that when you expand the nature of communication, you actually expand what it means to be human. And, Alan Kay is still leading the charge on this in many, many ways. and you can see some contemporary talks and how he feels, in a way, we've dumbed computing down to the point that it isn't really the kind of tool we need anymore. So please, look at these talks and think about them. And I just want to bring up a couple of projects that Alan Kay has pioneered, and these teams, I think at least one of them is here, and this project, Croquet 5, you can actually go to Croquet Studio.studio/demo, and you will see a demo that finally, remember that little drawing where people can interact at the same time? You will see a demo that shows that we can have a multiplayer experience like this. Croquet is a decentralized, web-based collaboration environment, and it includes collaborative editing and runs on any browser. So I encourage everyone here to try this demo, try and talk to David Smith. This is going to be released soon, and it's a huge opportunity to begin to realize this dream. Another project that Alan Kay pioneered and is just, actually I think this, yes, this was a video, and sorry I didn't tell them. Dynamic Land, which is based in Oakland, so you can actually go and see and interact with this project, is really a living project to reinvent computing from the ground up. And its premise is computing without screens. Screens, one of the problems with screens is screens divide us, this personal view. And also, we have crammed our amazing human bandwidth of interaction into pixels so that we can deal with screens. So this project actually starts with reinventing how we program together. Oh, good. Sorry, I just needed to press the thing. And as you can see, this is a 50-year project. One of the things I learned from Alan Kay is if you want to be relevant today, start 50 years out and then think about what you should be doing today. And all of the projection hangs from the ceiling. But you can go and experience this. And this is a not-for-profit research, not connected to universities. So if you're an investor, this is worth and it's not investment, this is worth sponsoring. And Brett Victor, in Alan Kay's words, is probably the greatest living designer on the planet. He has an amazing history. He was very key to some key aspects of Apple's work, and he has really, he begins from the ground up. When Brett takes on a problem, he begins at the very fundamental approach. And this work, computing together in dynamic land, is really, as someone who's done tons of code in his life, he was tired of everyone sitting behind these separate screens. Is this the way that we would get the best out of our human intellect? And so he basically, he has envisaged this future of computing beyond screens. Not only has he envisaged it, he has a living experiment in the heart of the community and research project that you can actually, go and visit and see for yourself. And they've also got a wonderful lot of materials there about this vision. This is a project that really is about envisaging a new future. Now, I just want to focus, when you go to the studio now, you see these giant projectors hanging from the ceiling. This is not a project about inventing hardware. But I want to talk a little bit about hardware, and I want to talk about the fact that we're on this cusp, and this is what I mean in my title, Spatial Computing on the Age of Light. We are at the cusp when light will carry data and computing for us. And these light bulbs, I can't estimate how far they are from market, but the technology is there to do this. And this is something Steve Jobs said. People who are really serious about software should make their own hardware. And this is really why I really care about this age of light. This, that will basically, and this is, again, you can follow this up after. I don't have a lot of time to talk about this. It's a big topic, but Professor Harald Haas has a TED talk. But the idea is liberating the photon, merging light and data communications. Why is this so important? It's because we have a real problem with power. And if we imagine a city where we have the kind of augmentations that we've been thinking of and designing of for a long time, this issue of electronics and their power consumption is actually vast. And you know, I think this is perhaps not even a 50-year vision, this is the beginning of a 100-year vision, but if you care about augmented reality and virtual reality, you should care about this transition, because right now, all of the things we're talking about in this conference and in other conferences, not just about augmented reality, about AI, about almost any topic in tech, if a large percentage of the world was using these technologies, we would have global warming on steroids. We would be toast. So, you know, this is going back again to things, the spirit of 2010. It's 9 a.m. It's probably only 9:30 now. Maybe it's 10 or 11. It's 9 a.m. in the augmented reality industry. Without a vision, people perish. It's your chance to build a big pie. AR is a techno-visionary's dream come true. These are rarely rare, very rare. You have to be patient. So, and this was another thing that Bruce made as the mandate. And I actually really like the term augmented reality. I was careful in my definition of spatial computing because I actually like this term, because built into the term is the mission statement. We're about augmenting reality, not degrading it. And I don't want to be in a world where we have to reskin it because it's so awful, and that's the only use case for augmented reality. And we are at this perfect storm at the end of Moore's law. And electronics, it's not widely talked about, but it's hit a ceiling. You can't squeeze any more wires into the data centers, and you know, this is the amount of energy that is wasted discharging and charging electrical lines. And we have this cold air of our problem with the limits of electronics, and we're right in the middle of this hot air where we want, you know, AR everywhere, and we want to have, you know, AI available to everyone, and personal assistants, so, and autonomous vehicles, and brain-computer interfaces. This is a really big deal. And photonics are, you know, anyone here, I don't know who in the audience is working on eyewear. It is absolutely the key. I've done other talks and would talk about this longer, but time is short. But it's not just for the eyewear, it's actually for the information and data processing. And as I talked about, you know, Professor Harald Haas, his idea of Li-Fi and the light bulbs transmitting both the, you know, the computation and the Wi-Fi, it's important for the full stack, from network, device, to experience. So, you know, and, you know, I sometimes like to talk about it as, you know, we are moving towards a photonic society. And it creates enormous opportunity for us to address the challenges of the 21st century. And just a bit of history, I have a real personal connection to this because my dad happened to be one of the first people in the world to use get an electron microscope. And he was of an era, he was a professor at Cambridge, but he was an era of the philosopher-scientist. And he was never afraid to think 50 years ahead. I mean, I found a poem he wrote to my mother the other day about quantum computing. I mean, imagine that. But he was a great polymath, and his work drew on, you know, the arts. He was a student of Wittgenstein when he was at university. And his work really didn't show much, you know, much sort of import when he was alive. But after his death, it's now often cited in Alzheimer's search because he found out how to stain and trap these cholinergic pathways. So, a message to us all. Everyone, you need to be a polymath in this day and age, but also fundamental in science. You don't know how long it will take before the payoff. And this is huge for AR, VR, the photonic brain. We're mapping the brain. What does that mean? It means that, you know, we really are at this point where we're merging with our tools. They're no longer external to us. This is a slide from an earlier talk. And I want to take us back to Doug Engelbert's letter to the future. And because this is worth reading, 1962, most of it's still not done or still not fully understood. But in you should read the book, Valley of the Genius. This is an excerpt from Adam Fisher's book. In one 90-minute demo, Engelbert shattered the military-industrial computing paradigm and gave the hippies and free thinkers and radicals who were already gathering in Silicon Valley a vision of the future that would drive the culture of technology for the next several decades. So, oops, sorry. I took you too far. I would like to see this mother of all demos come out of this community. So if you have it, let's aim for that next year. Grand challenge. But I just want to quickly, because I'm just closing out now, mention Worley, another brief co-founder of Augmented Reality event. He was with us for a brief year, but he is writing some very important letters to the future. I think he's called it Strange Works. He is on a project, Humanizing Quantum Computing. This is hugely important. You know, my dad was writing poems about it in 1972. Quantum mechanics is what makes a lot of the devices we love and the internet run, and yet so few people have any understanding. So thank you, Worley, for your letters to the future, and if you're wondering whether quantum mechanics and quantum entanglement is important, just look at the out there research. It's what makes us tick. So this is my sort of call to this community. What are the letters to the future that we're writing today? Kurt Vonnegut wrote this in 1988. His advice to people living in 2088, reduce and stabilize your population, stop poisoning the air and the water and the topsoil, stop preparing for war, and start dealing with your real problems. Teach your kids and yourselves too, while you're at it, how to inhabit a small planet without helping to kill it. I could go on, but you can see it here. I hope that we, continue to write some profound and important letters to the future from this event. Thank you.